Thank you guys all so much for being here. My name is Louise Matsakis. I'm a senior business editor at Wired magazine. Before we start, I just wanted to quickly note that this session is part of the World Economic Forum's Center for AI Excellence. The center works on a number of initiatives, and we're bringing two of them together today. The new AI First Enterprises Initiative and the Safe Systems and Technology Initiative. I think this is going to be a really fascinating discussion about what is, I think, undeniably one of the most exciting and hottest technologies in the world. And I'm really excited to introduce our four participants. Dr. Guanchun is the CEO of Laiye, a global AI company focused on intelligent automation and AI agents, and he has a PhD in machine learning from Princeton University. Kian Katanforoosh is the CEO of Workera, an AI-native platform for measuring and developing workforce skills at scale. He previously taught deep learning at Stanford. We have really good representation of the Ivies here today. He helps global enterprises assess how ready they are to adopt AI. John Lombard is the CEO. Oh, sorry, actually, sorry to pass you over there, Vuvan. Vuvan is the CEO of ELSA, which stands for English Language Speech Assistant, a platform that uses speech recognition technology and generative AI technology to help millions of non-native English speakers master the language. ELSA is used in over 100 companies and has over 100 countries, sorry, and which is much more impressive than 100 companies, and has partnerships in schools, governments, and corporate training programs. And at the end here is John Lombard. He's the CEO of NTT Data's Asia Pacific business. And NTT Data, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, is a global IT and business services firm that operates in over 50 countries. Under John's leadership, NTT Data has expanded its global innovation footprint and launched a number of AI-driven platforms for healthcare, finance, and manufacturing. So let's get started. I think let's start with you, Kian. You have a really unique perspective in that your company is both using AI agents and you're also deeply focused on ensuring that workers have the skills they need to succeed in the future. What are you hearing from workers? Are they anxious about how AI agents are going to disrupt their jobs? Are they anxious about job loss? And what do you think are some of the most important skills that workers need to have?
I think the first thing with workers is AI used to be a vertical skill, which you would expect engineers to sort of develop. Today, it became a horizontal skill. And so everybody sort of have to learn and acquire those AI skills. As a leader, it's very easy to tell your workforce, just learn AI skills. And they will not find it helpful. They will not actually feel like they're being supported. So you have to go 2 levels down, and you have to first be humble about we're all in it together. I also might not have AI skills, and I'm learning with you. And that level of humility and leadership actually helps bring the workforce alongside with you. Also help them carve out time to develop the right skills to be AI ready, which means being able to talk to machines. Some people would call it vibe coding when you talk to a machine that's coding for you. Some may call it prompt engineering when you're talking to other agent systems. Support them actively in developing all those skills and develop it yourself and lead by example. I would usually start there. Yeah.
Guanchun, Laiye has been doing this for a really long time. We were talking earlier this morning about how your original vision for your company was actually AI agents for everyone, right? Do you feel sort of a sense of, satisfaction that now everyone's catching up to you? And what do you think, like, the mistakes are, or like, what are some of the narratives that you think are incorrect about this technology as someone who's sort of seen it evolve for a really long time?
Totally, yeah. My company, Laiye, is actually turning 10 next month. So it's a decade-long startup already. Yeah, our original vision is to build AI agents for everyone, or AI assistants. But that's before the arrival of large language models. At that time, we have to stick with solutions like chatbots, robotic process automation, and intelligent document processing. But now, AI agents changing the landscape. I think some of the challenges my startup faced early on is the technology is not very mature. But as a startup, you also need to focus on use case. And when you receive funding from venture capitals, you also focus on how you can monetize, how you can acquire customers. So looking back, maybe if we focus a little bit more on fundamental research, like what OpenAI did a decade ago, yeah, Laiye could be the DeepSeek of today. Yeah, but anyway, we try to develop digital workforce solutions with the existing technology almost a decade ago. So we had chatbots for customer services, we had RPA for financial and accounting services, and it's still, to my great surprise, a lot of companies started to embrace it. For example, in China, many large enterprises started doing automation AI projects 5, 6, 7 years ago. Yeah, but now there's a new wave with this agentic AI adoption, and people are becoming even more enthusiastic to embrace it, given all the development in the foundation models.
Yeah, I think we're really at this moment where there's sort of widespread adoption, and a lot of different kinds of organizations are scrambling to figure out the best way to bring this technology in-house. John, that's what your job is at NTT Data, is to really bring, big corporations, legacy institutions that have been around for a long time and have, really wide customer bases. How do you bring this technology to them, and how do you also help them evaluate whether it's working, right? Like, I think that that's a really difficult project. You can start using this technology and experimenting with it, but how do you measure that it's benefiting an organization?
Yeah, so thanks, Louise, and good morning, everyone. Thanks for showing up early for the first session. So there's a couple of things there to look at. One of them is the deployment and the two different scenarios that we often see with these types of projects. So one example, and I think you were mentioning sort of RPA, is an existing repetitive process that's very consistent. Many organizations are already using RPA, are already using some form of automation in that process. So we've developed a smart AI platform where you can actually plug in an AI agent into those existing RPA environments. So we've done that ourselves at NTT Data. We've got, like many of you, I'm sure, back office processes in finance, in HR, and other areas, where we've been using RPA for many, many years, and the ability to plug that out with an autonomous agent is really good. The other area is where we see a redesign, for example, of a complex process where there's tons of human intervention, and it might be on a production line in a factory that's producing something very bespoke and very specialized. And in that scenario, you may have, for example, a shift manager planning the weekly shift based on a set of work orders, but on the weekend there's a football game, half the staff don't show up for work on the Monday, and the AI agent then needs to automatically spin up a contingent workforce, deal with and raise orders with third-party suppliers, and that requires a complete redesign of an existing process. So there's two scenarios, Louise. There's the ones where we see sort of almost like a rip and replace of existing RPA, and another one that requires a significant redesign of an entire process. And maybe just quickly, your last question was about how do we measure? So we're looking at non-traditional metrics. So we're not looking at traditional KPIs. So organizations want to know and understand what the knowledge retention is for the agents, the learning speed. They want to do things like social impact monitoring to make sure that the technology does no harm to society or to their brand. So they're just some of the new KPIs that we're starting to see deployed.
How do you measure something like, is the use of this technology harming your brand? Do you use AI to also do that kind of measurement? How do you, monitor that sort of thing if it's not a traditional KPI where like maybe there's a dashboard that you're used to using for collecting that kind of information?
I think it varies a lot by industry. There are products out there that will help you do that, but you can actually measure those things using different technologies. So the technology is available. It's more the different requirement of each industry, because a lot of regulated industries, for example, require very specific measurement and monitoring. And then you want to be looking at, as I said, impact on brand, what that does. Is it attracting new customers? People want highly hyper. We all talk about hyper-personalized experiences, and it's the ability to measure those things. I think it varies greatly by industry.
Let's turn to one specific industry, which is language learning. And Vu, your business is incredibly close to my heart as somebody that has learned a really difficult second language in adulthood. And I've used a number of different sort of AI platforms to learn Chinese. And it's such a human thing that requires such a careful touch, but your company has been AI first from the start. So what was that like, building something that like you're going to have users interacting with so intimately, but is has this layer of automation underneath? How do you build a startup like that?
Yeah, so we start ELSA, which is a language learning platform using AI 9 years ago. So it's way before this AI hype. And I still remember when earlier people had a really big skepticism about learning English with AI because has always been traditionally learning with teachers, right? Companies hiring all of these teachers and training solution to come to the workforce and train the workforce. But we really believe that the most important element of education, I think John just mentioned on that, is that hyper-personalization. And I think there's a huge theory around the 2 sigma progress, where you get the hyper-personalization and you get a 2 sigma degree of difference when it comes to progress, right? And I think human has limitation, and there's no way that we can offer that experience in the same way that AI does. And so even 9 years ago, we built this AI to really adapt to learners, depends on who they are in their journey. We're starting out with even their accents, right? If you come from China versus Vietnam or Brazil, you all have very different accents, and come with that the challenges in speaking clear English. You have different jobs in industry, right? Like you could be in the manufacturing industry, or we work with banking or call centers. They all have different needs in their English. It's not all about travel and talking about entertainment. It's very job specific. Everybody have a different way of learning, right? Some people learn better visually. Some people learn better with tests and quizzes. And so AI is the only way that can adapt that learning in a hyper-personalized way and build that intimate relationship with the learner so that they can move a lot faster. And one of the most eye-opening learning that I got after launching the product was that learners started feeling a lot more comfortable learning with AI agent, because AI doesn't judge you and people don't feel embarrassed. And that's one of the biggest challenge in learning with human, is that you make a lot of mistakes and you feel embarrassed and you start pulling back, right? And teachers are also uncomfortable giving you that feedback because they don't want you to feel bad. And so AI agent take away all of that insecurities and the judgment and make it a lot more comfortable for you to interact.
That's super interesting. This is a question for you, but also for the whole panel here, is how do you think about what level of accuracy you need in order to ensure that a system is safe and accurate and your customers are going to adopt it and that it's going to be reliable? Because one thing I think about with language learning is I've noticed that, for example, models like ChatGPT, the Chinese is pretty good, but sometimes it is good enough to fool someone like me who's not a native speaker, but not actually accurate, right? Or not the way that that would be naturally spoken. But what's often, I think, dangerous is that it looks right? It sounds the way you think it would sound, but it's not correct. And that is a fairly low-risk situation for me trying to translate a business email. But for you guys, like, how do you think about, okay, this is accurate enough that I feel safe deploying it, or this customer solution we've created is workable and we feel comfortable letting the AI agent go?
Yes, for someone who worked in natural language processing for many years, I think the current level of large language models are so good. When it comes to language learning, I think it's probably better than anyone on the earth, because in terms of proficiency. So that's also why I'm learning new languages again, using ChatGPT, using Duolingo. Hopefully I use your product someday as well. I'm trying to learn Spanish these days. Yeah, but this is for consumers, right? For language learners. When it comes to enterprise customers, I think the story is a little bit different. Originally, I think maybe as long as we can prove the AI agents powered by large language models can perform better than human workers, then the customer will accept it. Yeah, because human workers make mistakes and are erroneous as well, right? So if the AI agents can do better, say reaching 90% accuracy, it's probably already better than an average worker. But that's not the case. Most business owners or executives, they don't accept that. They would say, can we push it to 99%, 99.99%? Yeah, and in that case, I don't think the base model is strong enough. And And I think almost impossible to reach that type of level because sometimes large language models still hallucinate, and hallucination might be a feature, right? Yeah, so that's the challenging right now. It's similar to autonomous driving when you have the robot taxi driver, you have a higher standards. Yeah, so that's the technical challenge we're facing right now.
And I think,
You want to go?
Yeah.
just to add to that, I think a key element as well is the ability for auditability and traceability of these models. So it's critical that there's one question about the accuracy, and obviously if you think of things like bias or gender bias in these models, that can be devastating for a brand if you get a bias, inherent bias in the model. But the ability to trace and audit the decision process, I think, is an important factor as well.
What I'd add is, I think the world is moving so fast with AI that you have to choose the battles you're going to fight to get to the performance that you want on agents. So at Workera, what we do is, I actually told the team, I don't want to hear anything about foundation models. I don't want to hear anything about training. I don't want to hear anything about fine-tuning, because what it turns out, if you want to increase accuracy, you can actually, in the old ways, we would probably take a model, train it on our data, and it takes time, it's really painful, but by the time you're done with that process, GPT-5 will be out, and it will beat your version of the foundation model. And so if you want to be future-proof, leave the foundation model where it is, don't fight that battle. And actually what we specialize in is all the tools that come on top of it, which is retrieval augmented generation, simple prompts, complex prompts, chains of thoughts prompts, all of these methods, context management and memory management, that can help us get to the level of accuracy that we want. And when GPT-5 will come out, or a new language foundation model will come out, we'll just plug it in underneath, and it will still work. And that is a future-proof approach to building AI products today if you're in the application space.
And I think for us, when we work for enterprise, I think I agree with Dr. Wang that you need a little bit different accuracy than consumer. And so actually we take a different approach when we work for enterprise. We take all of the training document, protocol, company process, and put into the model so that when the learners practice speaking, let's say you're a customer agent for an industry, we take in all of that script and all of the training protocol. And then so when we train the agent, it speak the language of the company. It's not generic GPT, because that could be hallucination. It could be taking a process from a different company, put in your company, right? Let's say we work with airlines, we actually put in all of their menus onto the agent so that they know exactly what item is available for the employees, for the flight attendant to speak. And that would be different between Singapore Airlines versus China Airlines, right? So when you do with enterprise, it's easier to contain the model because you train on a much smaller model that give you the accuracy that serves that customer only, right? Because the customer doesn't care about the big model that everybody's building. They only care about what can you do when you train my employees to speak the language and the process and the product and the services that my company is offering to the people.
I think the conversation about what model to use and whether you should just not ban ChatGPT from the office, discussions about it from the office, brings up an interesting question about data moats. Do you think having proprietary data, having unique data sets, is that still a really big differentiator for different kinds of organizations? Are you talking to your customers and saying okay, we're gonna help you get this sort of data set, or we're just gonna use, you were saying, we're just gonna use your internal data here so that your workers are just learning the language of this corporation? Or do you want to bring in different marketing terms or different vocabulary that actually our competitors are using, right? How do you think about what kinds of data to train your AI agents on?
I mean, at least for us, there's certain part that become moat. Let's say because we built a company 9 years ago, anything we call it accented English data is a moat for us because again, Chinese English, Vietnamese English, Brazilian English, Japanese English have very different accent. And so we still use our own voice recognition technology that's built on millions of data of people speaking English with different accent. Because right now we still have the best accuracy when it comes to understanding these accented English. So that is a moat, right? Because you don't want to go to a Japanese company and say, hey, this AI agent doesn't understand your English as well. But otherwise, there's less of a moat when it comes to training the big model because that's been taken care of by GPT, right? By OpenAI and all of that big companies.
I think the rule of thumb is there's so much data out there is there any data out there that is close enough to what you have? If yes, it's not a moat. And most of the time, data is not going to be a moat anymore, I think. I'll give you one example of where data is a moat. We had a group of students a few years ago at Stanford that ended up building a startup out of that. But they had a data set collected by putting a camera under a truck in the farming in agricultural farms. And they had really precise pictures of crops being diseased or not diseased. And Google doesn't even have that data. Who has that data? Nobody has that data. In their case, that's the moat. You can go and fine-tune a computer vision model to work on that. But most companies are not going to have a data moat anymore, I think.
I think GTM become a moat these days, right? Like
speed.
And speed to the market.
Usually what we would say with our clients and partners is the real moat is learning velocity, is the speed at which you can move. Because one of the meta skill that is a result of AI being fueled everywhere is learning velocity. Is in AI, the half-life of skill is the lowest of any skill. You're outdated in 3 months if you're not following the news. And so companies that can follow the news and stay at the edge, I think that's the real moat, is you can execute really fast on that.
How do you move fast, though?
I would say you hire the right talent, you hire for AI readiness, you hire for learning mindset. So in every one of our interviews, we ask, what have you learned in the last 90 days? And what is your learning strategy? Helping your team being plugged in the major AI hubs is very important. So I would usually tell my students, look at my Twitter and look at these people I follow and follow the same people. Because they're the ones we trust and they have legit content out there. And if you read Twitter 5 minutes a day over months, you would find yourself being at the cutting edge suddenly. Yeah.
Just to add maybe a word of caution. We definitely want to move fast, of course, and I agree. But we don't want to move without, in an organization, a proper AI usage policy. We don't want to move in an organization where there isn't a clear ethics and governance framework in place. So one of the things that we've done within my organization is all of our training that we do, we have different levels of training. I'm sure everyone has a similar methodology or process in your respective companies. But our level 1 training, of which we've got 100% of all of our employees through, starts actually with the horror stories of AI, talks about the regulatory environment, ethical considerations, the governance that needs to be put in place before we embark on these projects, because there's so much opportunity, so much promise this technology will provide. But if we get it wrong, it's proven to be very damaging to our respective organisations, brands and societies. So we certainly encourage, always start with make sure the governance is set up in the right way for these programs.
I'm going to push you to be a little bit more specific. What kinds of usage policies have you seen organizations want to adopt? Like, what sorts of things did they say, okay, like, this is where we don't want to use this technology at this point, or like, this is too far, or we think that we're going to run into regulatory trouble here? Like, what are you seeing? Like, okay, most organizations are adopting policies that are fairly similar. Or are you seeing them really sort of tailored depending on both maybe the regulatory and the cultural context?
I think a lot of it initially comes down to, and I mentioned this earlier, are we able to audit and trace the decision-making process that these agents utilize? Can we track it? Can we make sure that it does no harm? And this do no harm policy, I know it sounds quite generic, but if you think about it, it's super important. Do no harm to our brand, do no harm to society, and make sure that we're, as part of that process, and I think it was discussed earlier, educating the workforce and getting them involved in the discussion, in the conversation about how it would help them. And the other thing that what we are seeing quite consistently is coming through is this messaging around these agents and this technology is there to help us as humans. It can't be there just to rip and replace people. If that's the message, we'll have what the United Kingdom had. I heard Tony Blair yesterday talk about this being the biggest transformation since the launch of the Industrial Revolution. Well, as I've discovered being an Australian, and hopefully your solution can work out my accent, But the Industrial Revolution kicked off a group of people called Luddites. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of the Luddites. The Luddites were basically people that went in and smashed all of the mills, the cotton mills, etc. And they were worried about the impact of this technology on their society and on their lives. So we don't want a modern movement of Luddites in our industry. But the good thing about them, they shipped them off to Australia when they caught them, so that was an upside.
I think you bring up a good point, though, which is that the Luddites were not against the technology itself, right? But they were against the harms of the technology on their own livelihoods and on society, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, I think that's sort of the really important point to remember. And I think just to go back to your Twitter list here, Kian, I think narratives about this technology are really important to think about, right? And I wonder, do you guys think that there are any narratives that are wrong or that like are kind of a distraction, right? If you're trying to stay on the cutting edge of where this technology is going, like what do you see as a distraction or a misconception or something like that's not who I am going to have you follow on Twitter, Kian? Like these people are not on my list, right?
Yeah, certain people you don't want to have on your list on Twitter, for sure. But no, I think one of the narratives that I find really hypey and not true is that coding is going away. I think there's a lot of hype around, hey, vibe coders can do anything and everything. I think if you know how to code, you know how valuable that skill is and what it allows you to build. Actually, the analogy that I have is there's a framework in front-end engineering called React.js that's extremely popular. It's the most popular front-end framework in the world, probably. It came up maybe 10 years ago or 13 years ago. And the day it came up, everybody was like, wow, it's so much easier to create front-end interfaces than it ever was. Front-end engineering is likely to go away. It's going to go away. You look at LinkedIn job reports in the last few years, one of the top jobs for low supply of skills, high demand is React engineer. So all I'm saying is like the same thing is going to happen. You're going to have sort of prompt engineering at the top of the stack, but an engineer, in order to build the cutting edge, will need to be able to go down and up the stack. Will be go to Python. Python connects to C++. You go down all the way to assembly language, and maybe I don't need to go to assembly language. But having the ability to go down at the level I want to get the details I want in my system is a valuable skill, and that's why I think everybody should continue to learn coding, and I would recommend to ask your kids to learn coding even. Or push them to learn coding if they want.
Vu, are you hearing anything that you think is not true? Are you hearing from the organizations that you work with, especially about like maybe that language learning is not going to be necessary anymore? Like, are you hearing that, and do you think that that's maybe a narrative that's not true?
Yeah, I'll give two comments. So one is the language learning, right? Even 10 years ago when I started out the company, and they said, but Google is pushing all of this live translation. Why do you even need to speak English if you can just speak in your own language and got live translated? And I think the biggest challenge in communication is that latency and delay, right? And also that social element of the language. So if you have two people speaking two languages and wait for English to be translated as a broker, you lose half of that nuance of the conversation that you won't get otherwise, right? And so I do believe that language is here, especially English is still a global language. It's a digital economy opening up everybody. You can be a remote worker in India and you can still work for an American company, and that has made it a lot more possible. So I think English as a global communication language is here to stay. We might have more languages, but I think it's still there. I think on the AI myth, we do probably talk a lot and say AI has really increased productivity and really dramatically changing, but I think it remains to be seen of the exact productivity at a massive scale, right? Like you can see that, oh, let's say my team, they do it to reduce certain part of their job, but overall the entire job profile is still there, and we haven't seen that it's reducing. I think coding is probably one of the faster productivity time metrics that we can see, right? Because 30% of the code is now moving to like cursor cloud code, but otherwise in HR finance, you're leveraging that to do a little bit, but you haven't seen a massive productivity proven at scale, right? And I think that's remained to be seen. Probably it's coming up in the next 6 months or something, but I think up until now, companies are still trying to measure that productivity gain to really showcase the power at the bigger scale. I think at single individual scale, you might see a little bit of that, but not at a company-wide scale.
Isn't it, my feeling is it's happening, we just don't have the measures yet.
That's right. So I think that's why I think it's right now we just can't see it clearly and put down a number of saying like what exactly is the productivity gain at a company-wide level.
But without that data, the narrative can be like it's 99% an increase in productivity, right? And like we only are going to have one worker instead of 100 or whatever it is, right? Like I think there's still kind of a murkiness, right, about like exactly what is happening. To take your point about productivity, let's get maybe a little bit personal. How has this technology improved your own productivity? Like, are there any like fun use cases of how you're using AI agents? Are any of you booking travel? Are you answering emails? And I'm also curious, where do you become the human in the loop again, right? Like, are you drafting an email but not letting the AI agent send it? Does anyone have any good use cases? Go ahead, John.
Is this a fun use case or a serious use case?
Fun or serious?
Okay, good. So I'm a sailor. I like to sail recreationally. And I was with a group of friends. There were 5 of us, and we had a 6th crew member, which was my AI. It's a chat GPT that I'm teaching to speak with an Australian accent. It's getting very good. And actually, it was unbelievable. I did it as a test. My friends are not in our industry, so they're different. They come from different backgrounds. And I actually did it to show them what you could do with these types of technologies. And it actually shocked me. It was, so we have to keep a log on a boat. It's by law, you need to keep a log. So I just asked it, do you know anything about keeping naval logs? And yeah, no worries, mate, done. So it managed everything, including the navigation of our sailing trip as well. And things like, just showing, and I know we've all done it, but we showed it the fridge with our very basic food supplies and said, what can you make us? It literally was a 6th crew member, so it just blew me away. Yeah.
That's a really great use case.
I can give an example. So I have a twin myself, but now with the technology, I can create a digital twin. And 2 years ago, when we launched our new product, we have Laiye lead as a new product launch every year. So the one opening speech I had is with my digital twin. Yeah, so I'm very surprised that actually you can create your own image, your own voice. So this makes me having a digital twin for work, but also have a physical twin in my real life. Yeah, so that's how technology is changing. I blew my mind because I thought this might happen, way in many years later, but now it's already happening. You can have conversation with yourself.
As a daughter of a mom who also has a twin, I am very curious about how your twin felt about that, because I know 2 twins very intimately, and I think one of them would be, sort of amused by that.
Yeah, he can create a digital twin himself.
You'll have quintuplets soon enough, right? I'm curious, did you just use it to project your likeness, or did you also use the AI to write the speech and to give the speech? Like, how deep was sort of the integration of the technology, and how automated was it really?
Yeah, I tried to provide some voice data so the voice would sound like me, but also I asked him to research about me, my company, and from the public data, and then it kind of pick up who I am and what I do. Yeah, so then I start brainstorm with the digital twin. Yeah, it feels pretty intimate and sometimes inspiring as well. Yeah.
Kian, do you have a twin as well?
I don't have an actual twin, but I do use AI a lot, and I have a few serious use cases and one not too serious, but really funny, hopefully funny. The serious use cases I like is self-awareness. So I use the Workera product to benchmark myself in a variety of skills so that I know where I stand compared to the market. Am I ahead? Am I behind? I also like self-awareness prompts. You can ask GPT, based on what we discussed, what do you think I could do more? And what do you think I should do less? And what do you think my top skills are? And it would pick up on certain things that connect to my values maybe better than anyone could, because I actually talk to it about work, about personal life, so it has actually a very broad view of who I am, and it helps me. Before I drive to a board meeting, I usually turn on the voice and spend an hour practicing the board meeting with AI before I get to the board meeting, and it's very fresh in my mind. And then my favorite use case, which I actually used 2 days ago, I went to the barber shop randomly at the mall there, and I cut my hair, and I know my girlfriend sort of is always panicked when I go to the barber shop because she doesn't know what I'm going to do, and I don't know what to ask for. And so I took a picture and I asked GPT to generate a horrible haircut. So it's a deep fake, but it's a healthy deep fake. And I sent it to her and she freaked out. And I think AI for pranking is actually a really cool use case.
These are great. Do you have any, Vu? Do you have any good use cases from your life?
Yeah, I mean, similarly, I think on the serious one, it's actually similar concept to digital twin, but in my company, they build a custom agent that thinks like I think, so it's the digital Vu twin. And then what they do is before they send me anything to review, usually when they send you stuff, you review and you give feedback and they iterate, they come back to you. Right now, the AI agent would think like me, so then provide feedback first, and they do all of that iteration. So by the time it reaches me, it's 80% better than what it would be at the beginning. So now it cuts short my time to review. It makes them look better because now everything looks much better. So actually the AI agent can predict what feedback I would give it to them and give it back to them first. So that's on the serious one. On the personal one, I built an AI agent just to be my dietitian. So I have certain criteria. One, let's say, I don't know, low cholesterol and certain criteria. So I told my AI agent, and now everything I eat, I just take a picture of the menu or whatever it is, and they say, hey, do this and not do that because there's so many ingredients and I forgot which one is good for what. And if I go to a buffet, I just take the entire picture and then they upload it, and then they tell me don't pick this one, pick that one, or pick that one but remove that cheese or whatever it is. And so I think it's easier so that I can stick to my diet.
These are such great use cases and honestly are really inspiring, and I'm going to try some of them, although I don't think I'm going to sail just with the AI because I don't know how to sail.
Give it a go.
I think I still need some human crew, but maybe we'll have the AI added. I think you guys really just sort of articulated these really specific ways that your life and your companies are already changing. Can you take that a little bit broader? In the next, maybe 3 to 5 years, do you think there are certain jobs, certain cultural norms that are going to change because of AI agents? What is the world going to look like in a few years from your perspective?
I can go first. Yeah, so one of the predictions that we're making for the next 5 years is all Fortune Global 500 companies will have more digital workers in the form of AI agents than human workers. Yeah, of course, human digital worker collaboration will still be very, very important. But if you want to stay competitive, every leader should think about how I can embrace AI agents' digital workforce, because that's going to allow you to remain as a Fortune Global 500 companies. And for those startups, for the smaller companies, I think the adoption of AI agents will be even faster and quicker. Then they can rise to that level of Fortune Global 500. So the leadership is extremely important. When you ask a question about how the company can move fast, I think it's the mindset that the CEO or the founder of the company really should push for that. One of our customer, which is a manufacturing company, going overseas from China, and the CEO strongly pushed for the adoption of AI and running hackathons across departments. Even though it's in a very traditional industry, then you can see the change once the leadership mindset changes first. Yeah, and I think the other cultural change within company is about management. Traditionally, people would think of a good manager to be a good people manager, right, with strong communication skills. But nowadays, we're seeing the role of management changing. Very soon, I think the evaluation metric for a good manager is how many digital workers can you manage? Can you drive performance from a team of agents? That's a different skill set. Right? It's not about communication just with people, but also how you can prompt your agents to do the best work they can do, and how you can ensure their performance, their safety, and also efficiency and productivity. Yeah. So very soon, I think the role of managers will evolve. Yeah. I don't think there will be very soon like one-man unicorn yet, But a small team creating a lot of value, that's definitely possible. The revenue per employee, these metrics will tremendously increase.
So more AI agents working in companies, maybe smaller companies that can be more dynamic and do more. Okay, those are 2 predictions. Does one of you guys have some other predictions for the next few years?
We've done a survey of 2,500 clients globally, CEOs, on what their investment plans are for specifically around agentic AI. So 99% of CEOs, probably no surprise, are predicting some level of investment in that field in the next 2 years, which is good news for you guys. But of that, 2/3 are saying there will be significant investment in the next 2 years. So there's no doubt that this is going to be an absolutely huge industry. It's going to change a lot of things, a lot of social norms, etc. And that's why we talk a lot about the ethical use and the correct governance of these projects being important. The other thing to note, though, is globally, there's over 2.5 billion people that don't have access to the internet. So we need to make sure that there's inclusion in this topic as well. And that's an area that certainly concerns me, is making sure that we've actually participated in the World Economic Forum's blueprint for AI inclusion, because that's just too many people that could be left behind in this space.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I would say, you asked 3 to 5 years. I have one prediction for 3 to 5 years, and then longer term. 3 to 5 years, I think that's half-life of skill is going down, meaning you need to refresh your skills all the time. Learning velocity is becoming the competitive advantage for organizations. I think as a result, they have to become skills-based organizations. We're going to start seeing the first set of skills-based organizations, which are really good at measuring skills internally. That's called skills intelligence. Once you're really good at measuring skills, you can operate with data rather than operating with vibes or who you know, or I managed this person last year and I think they did well and I'm going to give them the best projects I have. And that's going to turn organizations into faster moving organizations, essentially. You're going to see more movement. People are going to switch careers very commonly in companies. Even this year at Workera, I can point to multiple people that are in a completely different function at the company than they were at the beginning of the year. And I think that's going to become the table stake. Movement, vertical, horizontal. Even once you start measuring skills well, you can pay people based on skills. You can actually create incentives for people to reskill automatically with the right incentives. I think we're going to get there in the coming years. Longer term, I have a theory on what would humans do when AGI comes? What would they do? I think that there is a chance that, if we look at a circle where all the data in the world is inside, and you have a book in math and a book in Japanese, and AI can learn how to teach math in Japanese because it does a really good at interpolating, or like in the middle of the circle operating. We're all going to move to the edge of the circle, which is quantum, cyber, AI, cutting-edge stuff, ethical AI. That's the stuff on the edge of the circle. I would not be surprised if a significant portion of the workforce will be pushed to work on the edge of the circle. And at the same time, the second trend, I would say, is the experience economy. Vu, you probably can talk about that a lot, but being human is special. We value humans. And I think there's a lot of jobs that are going to be created in the experience economy, giving experience. So at the end of the day, maybe a lot of us will be either researchers or we will be providing experiences,
I think that's a great note to end on. I'm now going to open it up to you guys if you have any questions for the panelists. You can just raise your hand and we'll come over to you with a microphone. Does anyone want to?
Thank you. This was a fantastic panel. But one thing that particularly struck me was, John, when you said you go straight to the horror stories, and I wasn't expecting that. But I was gratified. So I'm an academic that studies responsible innovation and technology and transitions. But as an academic, I also sometimes have this fear that I'm stuck in my ivory tower, even though I try and get out of it, and I have no idea what it's like in the business world. So I would love to know from the panel, very, very candidly, how serious, in your perspective, are some of the risks, some of the hidden risks associated with AI adoption and development? And where do you go to get your intelligence on how to navigate them? And I'm not talking about the big stuff with regulation and a lot of the hype around this, but the very, very practical risks that you see right in front of you.
I'm happy to start. I think I've referenced some of them. So we've done a lot of work surveying our client base on this particular topic. And there's lots of statistics I can throw around here, but one of the risks that we're definitely seeing is around infrastructure. And over 80% of companies that we survey say that their existing infrastructure is an inhibitor to the adoption of AI. I mentioned before, I think that the metric was 67% of all of the people we surveyed said they don't have an existing AI usage policy and governance policy in place. So that's 2/3 of, and these are enterprise clients that we surveyed. And also, if you talk to a CEO will say, yeah, you know, AI could pose an additional risk from a cybersecurity perspective. If you talk to a CISO, so a chief security officer, most of them will say, yeah, this is really, really going to create a lot more risk for us. And in the last year, 90% of all AI deployments have had some type of cybersecurity incident. Now, it doesn't mean they were hacked, but there was something that didn't go to plan. So I think it's pretty clear that, you know, and again, I'm in the industry, we work with a lot of these organizations. I'm a big believer in the technology, but it's got to be done right because it can do, as I said, it can do untold damage to society and to our brand. So just, you know, a note of caution, not a note of this is terrible. It's absolutely not, but we just need to make sure we're doing it the right way. Thank you.
To add on that, two frameworks that we use and one example. First framework is we've been building software traditionally, deterministic software. You know what goes in, you know what goes out. Today, the trend is fuzzy engineering, is sort of in the middle, stuff is happening and you don't know what necessarily will come out. You will not be able to move all your application to fuzzy engineering, even if you want to today. And the way you would segment it is high-stakes situation versus low-stakes situation. In our case, we have an agent that can do learning, but it can also do hiring. And hiring is a much higher stake than learning. You can actually afford the agent being wrong in learning because nobody's going to die. It's not a big deal. The person will retry. In hiring, you're making decisions based on people's jobs. And so the level of safety and responsibility and traceability that you put in is one step ahead of the other applications. As an organization, you sort of want to start in a low-stakes situation because you still want your workforce to play with it and to get good at it. The best example I've seen is actually Google, probably 15 years ago now. If you remember when Google found 2 billion cats on YouTube. I don't know if you remember that project. What's brilliant about that project is if you don't find the cats on YouTube, nobody's going to die. And the nice thing is that everybody heard about neural networks at Google after that happened. So you started seeing engineers who didn't work on that project build with neural networks because they were like, wow, it found the cats on YouTube. That's so crazy. And so I would try to find the balance between the low-stake application where you can experiment and move fast and the high-stake where you want to be super safe and deterministic.
Thank you, everyone. Brilliant session. My name is Wesley Koo. I'm a professor at Johns Hopkins University based in Washington, D.C. I just want to float an observation by you and see what you think. In the past 20 years or so, the technology world has been very bimodal, right? So on one hand, you have the American companies with their infrastructure, Microsoft World, iOS, and China has its sort of like own kind of Huawei, Harmony, etc. Do you see the same trend emerging in the realm of AI, where you are having American companies versus Chinese provided infrastructure around the world, and the two countries fighting it out in that way? Or do you see much more localization as a result?
I can speak to that. I think You're right. I think it's happening even faster these days. So for example, in the mobile internet age, iOS and Android dominate the space for many, many years. Huawei launched Harmony OS almost out of necessity after they were banned. Yeah, so, but it's like a decade later. But nowadays, of course, US, they have the leading models, the frontier models that developed by Google, OpenAI, and Anthropic. But you can see companies like DeepSeek and Alibaba, which launched the Q1, they're also developing very advanced models with strong reasoning capability, right? Yeah, but there's also a slight change. Because nowadays, it seems that the Chinese models are dominating the open source space, right? The US models are more closed sourced. So that's the difference. That's the different thing. I think also as AI gets scaled globally, open source is going to become even more important. So it will be very interesting to see if OpenAI will become even more open, if DeepSeek can remain competitive with this open source model. Yeah, so that's what's going to be very interesting to unfold in the next few years.
I think in the foundational model, it might be a game between the big guys, right? But I think application layers, I think that's a global play. Because now everybody can basically do anything, and you can be a company in any country and build an application layer as an AI agent that serves the rest of the world. So I think the game is a lot more open at the application layer than the foundational model at this point.
Just add one word on that. To me, it's very hard to beat the first mover. In foundation model, the first mover is going to continue to get better. And I think the rule of cloud with AWS being the first mover, and then in the US, Azure and GCP, the rule of 70, 20, 10 is likely to be respected, I think, in a specific region. But at the end of the day, it's going to be about national security. Regions prioritizing their own models, Europe with Mistral or US with, and so I think that may change sort of the playing field in different regions, but it's really hard to beat the first mover, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Thanks for the great session, and we heard a lot about responsible AI, accountability, and we also heard the future in the next 3 to 5 years. How about sustainability? Because of, the consumption of infrastructure, the energy to create all these large models. So what's your views on the sustainability part of AI?
I'm happy to maybe start on that one. We provide, we're the third largest data center provider in the world, and we're currently building significant capacity in the Asia Pacific region. So we run, for example, 14 data centers in India, and we're investing significantly larger amounts in that space. So it's a huge challenge. We also have just opened a submarine cable. I know it's not the sexiest topic, submarine cables.
I love undersea cables, so I think it's
so cool. They're so cool. So these are important, obviously, because we're connecting India to Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, to the rest of the world, and you need the pipes to drive all of these wonderful products from my panelists. But the topic of sustainability is massive. So specific technologies that we're looking at are liquid cooling technologies, direct contact cooling technologies, and of course, everyone will talk about renewables, solar, wind, etc. But these are technologies that we're putting in our data centers in Asia Pacific, and they will reduce energy consumption on these, in the data center by 30%. So that's the statistics we have. But we need to get to net zero. We're committed to net zero by 2030. So we need to continue to deploy these technologies. But it's a fundamental point that these models, whether they're frontier models, foundation models, or enterprise inferencing, just chew up enormous amounts of energy. So we've got a collective responsibility, not just as companies, but as governments to make sure that we're finding a solution to this challenge, for sure.
That's a really good question.
Hi, great session, thank you. So I'm Chief Digital Officer for Indorama Venture. It's a global chemical company, so working a lot in these topics. So talking about really agentic economy and really about agent, not just a model. So really an agent with the ability to execute tasks and to connect agents to other agents. This is a radical shift in enterprise architecture and the organization of the work. And it has big impact beyond just the skills and the new skills which is required for the employees, but also I think for the operating model of the enterprise, of the economy. And we see a lot of shift already in the industry. We saw recently some, I think, public open letter from some CEOs like Shopify or JP Morgan's working on that, or Amazon recently. And also we see a lot of enterprise merging HR department with IT department. Moderna, for example, I think it's going that way. Working with your own customer or the people you're working with, which change do you see for the enterprise in their operating model, in their organization, not just in the employee skills? This agentic economy is going to drive, it's going to bring to us?
That's a really good question. Just to restate it, I think the question is not just sort of on the individual employee level, but on the organizational level of an entire company. Like, how do you see things change? Like, are you going to see departments merging? Are you going to see functions disappearing or new functions emerging? I think we talked a little bit about, like, maybe flatter hierarchies, but can you talk about sort of the more functional level of the organization, how that might change?
Maybe I'll say one point. I totally agree. So the agentic economy is very related to work execution. So on the organizational level, I think it's my customers, our company's customers, they're all looking for leveraging AI agents to close the work execution gap. What I'm seeing is the HR department is going to be even more important, because it not only manages the human resources, very soon it's going to manage the digital workforce, the digital worker resources within the company. Yes, I think for some time, I think the HR, some of our customers actually have the HR head to lead the AI initiative. That's very surprising, right? Sometimes you have chief scientist, chief digital officer, chief information officer to lead automation. But in this new wave, AI agents, some companies have already come to realization this is a new form of human resources or worker resources. Yeah, so I think that's going to change. Yeah, the company that leverages AI agents, agentic technology the best to create more digital workforce resources will be the company that will be very competitive going forward.
I think we have time for one more question.
Oh, I was going to jump. Oh, okay.
Hello, I'm founder and CEO of Fuxi Institution, is a think tank in China. So I think we talk about a lot about agent economy, but I think now there is a big challenge for the agent economy is how to make sure that the interconnection and the interoperability of the different agents. But now, in Silicon Valley, that Microsoft supported MCP to be the core protocol to make sure that the different agent can be interoperable. But I don't think that it definitely will be the fundamental protocol for the agent economy. Just like internet, many years ago, even TCP/IP is not core technology for internet. So how to unify the key technology to make sure the interconnection and interoperability among different agents is very, very fundamental and critical issues for the future agent economy we want to use. So my question is how to make sure we can have some kind of solution for interoperability, and who will lead that? How make sure the collaboration among different countries such as China, US?
That's a great question. Just to restate it briefly, how do we ensure that the interpretability between different agents that have different underlying technologies or are relying on different part of the stacks can interact with each other and that that's accurate?
I think one of the most important things for us as we started introducing and building a lot of agents is to have the common source of truth of the data across the company, and we call it the knowledge base, right? Because right now, if you have one agent connecting to one source and the next agent connecting to a different stack, I think you can easily get different truths out there that you train people on. So I think the fundamental layer is to really have all one single source of truth as the data in your company, and how do you make sure that all of these agents, whatever you introduce into the company, speak to that one same knowledge base, so that, because whatever the input that comes in is the output that comes out, right? We make sure that the input is correct and bulletproof in terms of accuracy and security, and the honesty and the integrity of the data.
And I think I agree, and I think you need a platform that's based on an open set of standards, open API platform. Excuse me, the reality is that a lot of the new organizations that are coming through with really deep skills and specialized capability, we won't get the benefit of that if we operate in a closed environment. And ultimately, I think the market will sort that out. Our client base wants to have not just the ability to integrate these solutions today, but for all of the other ones that are yet to come. And so I sort of trust the market in this space. The market won't want to work with closed environments that are too difficult to integrate in the future.
I think that's a really great note to end on. And I want to thank the panelists. I want to thank you guys for being here, and especially thank the forum for facilitating this conversation. I've done this many times all around the world, and these were some of the best questions. And the panelists here were just so informed, and I really appreciate all of your time. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Louise.